All right, you guys know that crazy group, Moms for Liberty? They go around protesting at the schools, saying that the LGBTQ books should be removed, etc. Well, it turns out one of them has a son who's trans. And that made for a really good story. So Claire Goforth covered it. She's an investigative reporter at Daily Dot's High Res Division, and she joins us now. Claire, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So is the mom in Moms for Liberty in your story one of the prominent leaders or just a rando in the group?
She's more of a rando in the group. She's one of the thousands of women who have been indoctrinated and radicalized by Moms for Liberty since its founding in 2021. As your viewers no doubt know, Moms for Liberty was founded originally to protest mask requirements and COVID-19 restrictions. And very quickly it pivoted to doing what it says is opposing woke ideology. In its view, it thinks that anything that is LGBTQ affirming or has to do with racial inequality in schools is a form of indoctrinating our kids. And in their view, they would even argue it goes so far as grooming children. So the trans man who I interviewed for this story, Kane, he was online one day and saw this viral video come across his feed. And the video was of his mother attending a meeting in Kansas, and in which she made some really bizarre claims about teachers trying to queer all of the children and to really just indoctrinate kids to be gay, to be trans. And he was shocked. He knew that his parents were anti-LGBTQ. I mean, when he came out, they had him go through the
conversion therapy.
Gay conversion therapy. Thank you so much. So he knew that they already had these stances. I mean, he grew up in the biblical schools, private school, but this was a significant escalation for his mother, and he was quite frankly stunned and hurt.
See, that's interesting that he's stunned. That's why I wanted to talk to you. So, on an interpersonal level, it's devastating to have your mom argue against your existence in a sense, but I'm a little surprised that he's surprised. And that goes to my ignorance and hence the conversation about how does this play with the Southern Baptists, evangelical Baptists, etc. Because I would imagine that tons of them would support Moms for Liberty. Is that wrong? Is Moms for Liberty even a minority within the evangelical fundamentalist churches?
I would say that they are not. However, the thing that Moms for Liberty has done so effectively, and what we've seen with other conservative mouthpieces across the political sphere, is that a couple of years ago, we were in a position where we were all kind of on the same page when it came to LGBTQ equality, at least out in the open. People were really quiet who opposed it. And what Moms for Liberty and a lot of these conservative personalities have done, including people who they've given platforms to, like James Lindsay, who popularized smearing LGBTQ people as groomers, is that they have taken this bigotry and they have just burst it out into the open, and they have people who, maybe they were kind of on the fence previously. They have successfully argued to them and convinced them that this thing that they weren't sure of is actually very harmful to children. And specifically by focusing on children has been so effective for them, because if you would ask most of these people, you would find that they're gonna say, well, it's okay for adults, but it's not okay for kids. We don't want kids to be sexualized too young. That's something that they continually say, that children are being sexualized in schools. When in reality, what is happening is that children know who they are, and they are trying to come to terms with who they are. And the idea in their minds of a child who is 8 or 9 years old, like many of the sources those who I've talked to throughout my career in the LGBTQ community is that they know who they are from these young ages, and they are trying to figure out and come to terms with that. And what Moms for Liberty has done is told these parents that it's not that this is who your child actually is, but this is who your child is being told they are by teachers and by adults that are also LGBTQ.
So it feels like between 2004, where the Bush team put a lot of ballot measures on against gay marriage, and that worked and that helped them to win that presidential election, and let's say 2021 or so, for that 17 years, we had a little bit of a respite where the right wing didn't go on the warpath with bigotry against gay folks in general. Am I seeing that right? Did it die down a little bit and now it's flared back up? Yeah, let me ask it that way.
It certainly does seem like it. I live in Florida. As we know, ground zero for many of the culture wars. Governor Ron DeSantis has been a champion of that. He's been using that to get onto the national stage and in an attempt to bolster his presidential ambitions. I would say that for many years, there was this growing acceptance of the gay community and the trans community. People were starting to take note of the violence that they experience and the rejection and say, this is not who we stand for as Americans. And then, around the rise of Donald Trump, which everything does often come back to him, there's been this backlash since 2015 that has been growing. And in an interesting and alarming way, the pandemic seems to have really accelerated that. People were stuck in their houses. They're consuming all of this content online. They're angry, they're isolated. And the groups like Moms for Liberty, they capitalized on that. And they used that just isolation and confusion that people were experiencing because of the pandemic to get into their heads. And I don't think that absent quarantine and all of the stresses of the pandemic, we would have seen such an accelerated rise of this homophobia and transphobia that we're seeing. But here we are, 2023, and it feels like we're relitigating things that we had decided that we accept as a people 7 years ago. And as we're seeing, studies are starting to show that there's a rise in violence and hate speech and all types of bigotry against this community, that this is not getting better. And Moms for Liberty, while they will say that they're just trying to protect children, they're certainly part of what many people view as the problem, who is making this much more common in our society.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to entertain the idea that it's just about the children, because if it was and you really were worried about sexualizing it, you would take out tons of books that sexualize things that are straight. But they never focus on the books that have straight couples, straight sexual relationships, etc. They're only focusing on the LGBTQ community, and now also randomly Black folks. And so, to me, the race one is different, and that's more of a right wing and a political issue. But I think, but if we were being honest, isn't this just driven originally by religion? And I don't mean all religion. I think there's tons of good religious folks who are open-hearted and open-minded, etc. But fundamentalist Christianity is what told people that being gay is a sin in the first place. And so, are we just being kind of a little bit politically correct by not pointing out the real problem, which is fundamentalist religion?
You make a very good point, Cenk. In fundamentalist religion and the right-wing evangelical groups have made a very strategic effort over several decades to infiltrate their religious views into political society. They've been very successful at that. I don't know if it's fair to say that they entirely hold the blame for this, because there are certainly many people who, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, they claim that they are Christian. They wrap themselves, in the blood of the lamb. But I think really they're opportunists. They're essentially grifters, and they really are just capitalizing on the fears that many people have, or their just lack of understanding. It does start with religion for many people, and many people who I've spoken to over the years have specifically pointed out that religion, this idea, people going to Leviticus and all these other things from the Bible that are, anti-LGBTQ are to blame. But I don't think that they're the only ones to blame. I mean, do we really believe that all these senators who are suddenly picking up the mantle of homophobia, where they've been kind of quiet on the issue or even supportive of the issue for many years, really it's coming from a sincere religious belief, or is it simply just they know this is a way to get themselves in the news, this is a way to get attention, and it's a way to get votes in the primary?
Yeah, I mean, look, you got two different sets of problems there. The political leaders want to take advantage of it. They're the most callous, craven people in the world. I don't believe they're religious. I don't think they have any faith. I don't think they have any morals. And they know that not only is it going to get voters from their base, but it's going to serve to divide the country and have us fighting each other nonstop while their corporate donors take the loot out in the back, right? And get trillions of dollars in tax cuts for the rich while we're fighting over these issues. So the political leaders are obvious and brazen, and it's actually super disheartening for the American public to not realize how disgusting most of their political leaders are. But good news is, if you look at the polling, they do realize it. It's just corporate media covers it up and makes it seem like, oh no, they're just having debates. But that's easy. To me, the base is the hard part, because I feel like, Claire, that's where we get skittish. And we're worried about offending good religious people, and there's tons and tons of good religious people. And so we don't mention, hey, Leviticus is total nonsense. It's made up jibber jabber. And by the way, religious people also believe that. They just don't know that they believe that, because right next to don't lie, a man shall not lie with a man is don't eat shellfish. Show me one evangelical Christian that doesn't eat shellfish. You can find a couple. You're not going to find many. And it is the same exact transgression as homosexuality, according to Leviticus. So, but no one on TV, no one in media, no one in politics will ever say, I'm sorry, but fundamentalist religious people in America, it's easy to say it abroad about Muslims and other religions, right? But here in America, fundamentalist Christians are totally and utterly full of crap. And until we do that, you're not really going to be able to fight back, right?
It's true. I mean, I'm not going to argue that point with you, because you're right. I grew up going to the church. I went to a Christian school, and but my parents were certainly not fundamentalist in any way. But I did know fundamentalists, and I knew people who, to this day, they are very anti-LGBT. They're anti anything that's not just white bread Christianity. And that is the power structure that we've been living with in the United States forever, essentially. And we saw some gains towards equality and a more secular society, where we really tried to get back to the idea of the separation of church and state. And what we're seeing is this backswing, this backlash to that. And there are religious leaders and there are people of faith who are leading that charge, or people who claim to be of faith. There's really no denying that. And the question becomes is, how do we fight against this? How do we fight against this idea that, well, as Christians, we have to be opposed to people being gay and people being trans because Jesus says so. But Jesus didn't actually say so, right? It's mostly like Old Testament stuff, and it's mostly your religious leaders that you're looking to. And I feel like these people have gotten so far away from what like the essence of Christianity is, and the essence of so many religions are, that it's just basically about love and acceptance and kindness. And they're addicted to rage. I don't know how we cure them of that addiction, but it is really starting to show itself in the discourse that you see online and the things that we're seeing in the real world as well. I mean, it's really disheartening to see the United States kind of take a backslide.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's great religious leaders, wonderful religious leaders. And in fact, my hero is a religious leader. Martin Luther King Jr. was a reverend, right? And so having said that, a huge percentage of religious leaders in all the different religions are the worst people on earth. And they scam their congregants. They don't believe a word of anything that they say. They lie to the people that come to their churches, their mosques, their temples on a regular basis. I mean, the whole abortion thing is a total scam. Numbers 5:11 through 31. Read it. God is pro-abortion. Inarguable, 100% not close. God says if you think your wife cheated on you, perform an abortion. And if she miscarries, that means, and the priest is to perform the abortion, and then if she cheated, don't worry, God will abort the baby. What part of this is questionable?
I mean, that certainly is a little misogynistic, but it definitely is pro-abortion. I would also say the founding fathers did not have any problem with reproductive freedom. The Constitution doesn't say anything about abortion. I will say that the only pedophile that I've ever personally known was my preacher, and he went to prison. So I mean, there's just so much evidence that says that.
Yeah, and guys, you got to be careful around any leader that, and it sucks because again, some of the best people are in these categories, but any leader that's looking to work with kids and is given tremendous authority that you cannot question. That's the thing you really, really got to watch out for, okay? So anyways, but back to Kane and his mom. So growing up in that environment, I mean, Kane then goes to conversion therapy, which is just torture, right? And I mean, it's total, utter nonsense. And look, when it comes to morals, it's easy to understand. We have an instinctual reaction if someone punches us in the face. We go, that's bad. If somebody steals our stuff, we have an instinctual reaction, that's bad, right? If someone is attracted to someone else, you don't have an instinctual reaction at all. You have to be taught that hate, right? But so that's why I'm curious about Kane's perspective, because he gets taught to hate himself. How does he break out? How does he forgive his mom? Does he not forgive his mom? His mom then becomes crazier. How does all of that play out?
You know, in Kane's life, in his early years as a child and as a teen, it played out in really depressingly familiar ways, where he was struggling with suicidal ideation, severe depression. And then when he went to college and he was finally able to break free a little bit from his family, he went to a public college and he could be around people who are different from himself. And he really started to notice positive role models in the community who were gay or trans. And it made him realize, these people, there's nothing wrong with this way that I feel about myself. And he was able to accept himself, right? And eventually he became mostly estranged from his parents. But the thing that really broke my heart reporting this story about people who grow up LGBTQ with a Moms for Liberty parent is how, to the person, they said to me that they still love their parents and they hold out this hope inside of them that someday their parent will actually accept them. Because the sacred bond between a parent and child, it can be severed in many ways, but it's hard to completely, absent the most horrific circumstances, to break free from that. I remember this young man who I interviewed for the story, his father had abused him physically terribly, told him that he was the actual devil, and had just put him through absolute hell, honestly. And he still would not, he's sitting there across from me and he's saying, but he was a great father. But he was a great father because his father provided for him. And I left that interview, and I will tell you, as a journalist, you sit through things like that, you hear things like that, and you try to keep it together. But I left that interview and I sobbed in my car because I just thought, like, here's this poor boy, he has been accepted and mistreated so terribly by his family, and he still wants their love, and he still loves them. And Kane, it was the same. After the story published, everything is now out there. Right? Kane did not use a pseudonym. His parents could see this story. They may have. He retweeted the story and said, "If my family is reading this, I love you."
Yeah.
I wish that his parents could be so graceful.
That's a great way of putting it. So I got kids, and nothing would be more heartbreaking, nothing, than to be severed from them. And that's why I can't understand these parents. And that's because I'm not in a cult. And again, if we're being honest, fundamentalist religion is nothing but a cult. And so they brainwash you into hating certain people and honestly losing touch with reality, because they tell you, do not use logic, do not use reason, only have faith. Okay, right, but what am I gonna have faith in? Have faith in me. Oh, yeah, that's real convenient. And then the cult leader tells you all these hateful things that are not even necessarily in the Bible or the Quran or anything else. And then they fill them with so much hate propaganda that they turn against their own kids. And look, I'm gonna end on a non-hopeful note, which is not very like me, but until we get rid of fundamentalist religion, and we're gonna go through this cycle again and again and again and again, because they keep brainwashing people into thinking that people in the LGBTQ community are evil or possessed by a demon or is doing something terribly sinful, awful that God hates. Well, of course those people are gonna get brainwashed into hatred. So, Claire, I just don't see a way to fix this at its core without addressing fundamentalist religion, and I don't see this country or any country having the courage to do that.
You may be right, but I hope that you are wrong. My stepdad loves to say, he says love wins, and I have faith that it does. I just know that time moves slowly, but I do think it bends towards positive change. So I suppose I'll be the one to end on a positive note. I maintain optimism, and I have faith in the American people and people in general. And I hope that they prove me right.
I hope so too, Claire. And I'm generally an optimistic person, but I will say, look, I'll end on this. I'll flip it on the script on them. So look, I love all people, and I want them to get to a better place. Even lunatics like her and Elon Musk talking about how the schools teach Marxist gender ideology. I think that doesn't even exist. He just made it up, right?
I know.
So I wish mental health for them. I wish that they break out of their cult. I wish that they get rid of the brainwashing that has poisoned their minds. It's an absolute poison. And I don't hate the sinner, I hate the sin. So even those people who I'm furious with, including Kane's mom, I don't hate them. I wish the best for them. And the best for them isn't to believe lunatic ideology that is centered on hate. And so that's the sin that I hate, but I don't hate the sinner. I wanted to be clear about that. All right.
I agree.
Okay, really interesting story. We'll put the link down below. Everybody check it out. And for all the Kanes and Kane's moms out there, please focus on the love instead of the hate. And by the way, if you're a Christian, you're Muslim, you're Jewish, etc., in the books, there's plenty of hate. I'm sorry, I love you, but it's true. But there's also plenty of love. So why don't you focus on the love side? And in Christianity, that's mainly in the New Testament, where a brother named Jesus showed up. So please look into it. All right, Claire, thank you.
Thank you.